And we're live. Hello, everyone. Oh, we have an echo. Okay, let's test that again. Hello, everyone. Rex, I think that was actually your speakers bleeding into your microphone. If you have a headset, I muted your microphone and I noticed it stopped. Sorry, everyone. That didn't happen in the green room.
Oh my God.
But Janet, it looks like your microphone's working very well.
Okay, great.
Oh, because you have a headset. Yeah,
I'm wearing a headset, which was recommended. Yeah.
I think I will definitely put that in the notes next time to see. Okay, let's
Yes.
test
Earbuds. You got the earbuds there, Rex?
It definitely didn't do anything during the green room. So while he gets that set up, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Nick. I am the digital marketer and bookseller, one of the booksellers here at Mysterious Galaxy. Tonight we're here to discuss Rex Pickett's newest novel, The Archivist. Or Archivist, right? Archivist. I messed it up.
You did
Archivist.
it, Nick.
We even had a conversation. Oh, it's pronounced this. Archivist. I am sorry, that threw me off. All right. And joining in conversation, we have Janet Somerville. So Janet taught literature for 25 years in Toronto. She served on the PEN Canada board and chaired many benefits that featured various high-profile authors. Now, Rex is a California-based screenwriter and author who is most well known for writing Sideways, the book that became one of the most critically acclaimed and highest-grossing comedy films in Hollywood history. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Rex and see if that works better.
How are we doing?
All right. Sorry, Rex. I'll let you figure. I'm so sorry. All right. But I'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about The Archivist. It has been described as suspenseful and haunting. Part of the blurb goes, twisting slowly like a tourniquet, The Archivist turns into a suspenseful murder mystery with multiple and intersecting layers. Not just a whodunit, it is also a profound meditation on love, privacy, and the ethics of destroying or preserving materials of a highly personal nature.
I don't know what he's doing.
He's looking for headphones that are apparently working.
He's looking for headphones or maybe, earbuds that have a longer cord. I don't know. I could talk about The Archivist if you'd like. If you want me to step in, Nick, I can. Oh,
sure.
Here he is.
Hi, everyone. So as a quick reminder for everyone, before I eventually disappear, we're going to be selling these lovely books, and Rex is going to be gracious enough to come in and sign and personalize them. Now, for those who don't know what personalize means, you can write a little note like to Eddie, and then he'll sign it, or you can just go ahead and sign it. Sometimes that's called dedication. So sign or dedicated. So for every book you purchase, you will do that. And also, real quick, if you have any questions, please go ahead down below and hit the Ask a Question button. There, you can submit them, and we will pull from those and hopefully ask those questions. I'm going to unmute Rex and see how everything's going. Okay, I mute again. I'm so sorry, Rex. Okay.
He doesn't have the cable.
Oh, you don't have the cable? Okay, so what may happen, which is very unfortunate, Rex, unless you have a cable to do it, we might have to mute your speakers, which is not going to work too well because Janet has to talk to you. Okay, let's see how we can work this. But yes, Janet, if you want to go ahead and talk about the book, I'll more than welcome to take that.
Okay. Well, I can talk a little bit about it. I don't want to ruin anything that Rex might say, but one of the things that's really interesting about The Archivist is that there are 4 very strong female characters. And all of these characters, I'll talk a little bit about each of the 4 of them, all of them are basically vying for the soul of Raymond West. And Raymond West is the Pulitzer Prize winning novelist at the university who is in line for the Nobel Prize for Literature. These four women are his patrician wife, Elizabeth. She is planning to make a massive gift to the university library. And the library is host of his papers. Oh, Rex is going to reconnect, I guess. So that's Elizabeth, his wife. The second woman vying for his soul is Nadia Fontaine. And she's the woman who's originally assigned to his papers, to catalog his papers. She is an archivist at Regent's University. And Regent's University is really just an analog of UCSD, which is Rex's alma mater, and it's where his papers are. The Rex Pickett Papers are at the University of California at San Diego in that massive, brutalist library building. If you're familiar with San Diego, which I'm sure you are because you are at Mysterious Galaxy and
I'm here.
San Diego. Have you ever been to the Geisel Library at UCSD?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, it's a very famous building architecturally, and it's named after Theodore Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss, because his papers are also there in their archival special collections. So Rex's papers keep company with Dr. Seuss's papers at UCSD.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty fun, isn't it?
That's an honor. That is an honor.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And he went to UCSD. Rex went to UCSD. So by donating his papers to the university, it's a sort of a homecoming for him and for his work. It's where he really came to love literature. The other woman who's involved with Raymond's soul and his legacy is a special projects archivist named Emily Snow, and she's really the protagonist of the novel. She's in her mid-20s. She's on loan to the university to get Raymond West's papers in order because Nadia Fontaine, and this is not a spoiler because you know from the opening page that she's dead.
Yes.
So
what? Plot twist.
No spoiler there. Nadia is dead. So Emily comes in to take on the rest of Nadia's job that Nadia started. And in the process of getting Raymond West's papers in order, she discovers some dark secrets. And those secrets are also in the archives. So part of the great mystery of the book is, number one, solving Nadia's death. It's a suspected suicide, but when Emily starts digging through the archive, she realizes that perhaps it is not. And yeah, let's see if Rex is back. Oh, he is.
I switched to another computer.
Rex, yay, it works.
I went to another computer because anyway, it doesn't matter. I heard you, Janet. I'm sorry.
Did
everyone.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to step in here and talk about the strong women characters that you created for the novel? I've set them up. I've talked about Nadia and Elizabeth and Emily.
I was hearing you. I had to switch over to another computer. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay.
Excellent. All right, everyone. I'm going to song and dance out of here, but please enjoy Rex and please enjoy Janet. Thank you.
Okay.
So the camera is not as good on this one, but sorry, ladies and gentlemen. When my papers were taken in 2012, I just literally, and I wrote about this in an article that might be linked here, I literally just dropped off 50 boxes on the loading dock at the University of California, San Diego Geisel Library. And I didn't know what was going to happen to them. And I went off to Chile to write Sideways 3 Chile and came back and we were doing the play at Sideways the Play at La Jolla Playhouse. and I was very excited about that. And there was a faculty club dinner that was in my honor, and at the end of it, a woman came up to me and said, "Hi, I'm your archivist," and I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, I didn't know there was a person behind. I just dropped off these boxes, and she said, "Would you like to come down and see what we've done?" And so I said, "Of course." So I came down and saw there was a couple display cases. And you have to understand, I left for LA 30 years ago with 5 boxes and returned with 50, with nothing, no children, and no longer a wife, nothing, and a couple major, a couple motion pictures I wrote and directed and whatever. And that was my life, was in those 50 boxes. And here they were, beautifully arranged in these gray document boxes, Rex Pickett Papers, and it was quite a moving experience. And so I thought I wanted to investigate the world. And once I started to investigate it and started talking to the woman who processed my papers and getting into that world, I thought it would be something would take me out of kind of the sideways Miles wine sort of thing. And but now I have to get into fictionalizing. I've got to come up with stories, and I love a word I use a lot, as Janet knows, is verisimilitude, the ring of truth. And it seemed to me that I wanted a young protagonist who comes as a project archivist, which is something I'd heard about. And I thought, oh, she's like a lone gunslinger. She comes in for one job, finishes the job, and goes out. So she comes in to finish up processing of the papers of this famous author, Raymond West, who I base a little bit on myself, even though I'm not near as famous as the author I made him to be. And her predecessor drowned. And as she gets into finishing up the collection, she gets kind of deep into the politics. But as Janet alluded to, another term I learned in my investigation, my research, were the dark archives. And it's where a lot of stuff is dumped that isn't available to the public, and it's not in finding aids. And she finds a treasure trove of love emails. And now we go back in time. But here's something else quickly, is I originally wrote it as a limited series. I wrote it as an 8-episode limited series. And I got to the end, and Rick Bleiweiss of Blackstone Publishing called me up and said, "Rex, we no longer just do audiobooks. We're now a full-scale publisher." He said, "What do you got?" And they did all 3 of my Sideways books. And he said, "What do you got?" And I said, well, I wrote an 8-episode limited series, which nobody does. You would write the pilot, and as you well know, Janet, because you're doing the same thing right now, and then you try to get your agent to sell it. But no, I wrote all 8 episodes because I was so swept up in the story. I just was so, it's 530 screenplay pages. And I said, I'd like to write the novel that the limited series was based on, but I didn't get a chance to write. And he said, great. And so I was kind of off and running. The novel is different than the limited series because it's basically 2 novels. It's a close third person of the young 27-year-old project archivist who just comes in innocently to finish up a job. It's kind of a Bildungsroman in some ways. And now she's confronted with this past of her predecessor and an affair she was having with the famous novelist, which is highly unethical in that world. And
that's something that appealed to you, I think, about exploring this terrain is the question of ethics, and also what gets preserved and how it gets preserved and who makes those choices. Is it the person who's donated the papers? Is it the person who is making a big gift, to arrange for the perpetuity of all the archives? Is it the person who's in love who gets to make these choices?
Well, I mean, just the very fact that there are choices is amazing. So in the case of the archivist, young project archivist Emily Snow, if she were to take these emails to her supervisor or to the director of special collections, they would immediately quash them. And now we get into some other, this is more the fictional narrative side. The famous author is married to a very wealthy woman who's about to donate $25 million to this library, which the director of special collections has orchestrated. So obviously this would be very compromising and very damaging, and probably would result in the rescinding of this $25 million gift. But the 27-year-old is sort of faced with what she thinks is something that should be preserved, and not just the epistolary exchange in email, but also a book they were collaborating on. And that makes it even more powerful because he is of such repute in his world that in her mind, in her young kind of, I mean, she's aware of the consequences. I mean, she's putting her professional life at stake here. She's putting her reputation at stake. And I think it's kind of hard for me, people in the archival world understand that, but I think it's sometimes hard for just, for other people to understand in that world. For me, it was pretty incredible to find out what is really at stake when you come across compromising materials.
And also, Emily, fortunately, has a mentor who she consults occasionally at the Harry Ransom Center in Texas, the famous archival repository in Texas. So at least she has somebody she can talk through some of her issues with, but it is her decision in the end what to do. And before I lose the train of thought that I just had, maybe you could talk about the title, because the title not only applies to Emily, it applies to, do you want to talk about what else the title, The Archivist is the perfect title for this book, but not just because Emily's the archivist. Why else is it?
Well, I mean, it's, obviously the predecessor, her predecessor is also an archivist, and, it was an archivist who, and I wrote about this, who inspired it, because what happens is when an archivist takes I didn't know this, when they take over your work and they go into those boxes, they are delving into a private life. This is my private life. And I'm particularly, I mean, somebody's reading my journals, somebody's reading novels I wrote when I was, attempts at novels when I was 20 years old. And they almost know you better than you do at that point, because I haven't gone back and read them. So I'm interested in those issues of someone wanting to know you. And so Raymond West, fictionally, not in real life, fictionally, falls in love with the dead predecessor because in doing his papers, she knows him better than basically his wife, if you want to know the truth. And that is to him, that is a very powerful and alluring thing, that someone knows him that deeply and that closely. And so it gets into some complex and nuanced themes about that. And also the fact that Emily, in getting to these materials and not showing them to the director of special collections and her supervisor and other people, not bringing them to her attention, and of course how she comes across them is in itself crossing of lines. She takes them off the university property. That's illegal. And then when she confronts the famous author with this book, which she finds, that is highly unethical. She crosses lines, but she doesn't do it because she's some renegade or anything. She does it because she believes that it should be part of his legacy, part of his historical record. And I'm kind of going for those bigger themes. Well,
and also she has a moral code, like Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe. She has a moral code that she lives by. It's maybe not. Well,
always... I mean, The Long Goodbye is, of course, as you well know, is one of my favorite novels, and certainly one of the favorite mystery novels. And in The Long Goodbye, Chandler was trying to escape the genre, and in fact, he had to fire his agent because they didn't want him to write The Long Goodbye. But The Long Goodbye is a whodunit, and so is The Archivist. It is a whodunit at the end of the day, because not only does Emily discover that there was a wrongful death, we don't want to give too much away.
No.
She discovers it was really a wrongful death. She also is the one who, well, now we would be giving something away. This has been buried. They're gonna take a $25 million gift. They are going to have the Raymond West collection. The library is going to be named after his wife, the Elizabeth West Library. The table is set for everybody. the director of special collections who has been cultivating this relationship for years. They've taken this papers. If he wins the Nobel, oh my God. And so this is the fictional side of me that, it's like, Miles loving Pinot and Sideways or something. But the fictional side of me, there's one problem. This 27-year-old is about to throw a wrench into the spokes. And she does. And
and that's what makes it interesting too, that she does that, and so the stakes are raised when she does that because she's there in pursuit of truth.
That's right.
Right.
She not only initially can't live with, initially she's shocked by the epistolary exchange, which she reads on her own, which she probably shouldn't be doing. And I go back in time. So I write that story is written in first person from the point of view of Nadia Fontaine. In the teleplay, of course, I can't do that. I just go back in time. But it is a passionate love affair, and they're both married, so it is a double infidelity. And so being privy to that almost kind of disgusts her on some level, if you want to know the truth. But what happens is as she gets into these emails between these two very literary and two extremely bright people, is something beautiful that she thinks should be preserved. And
it's not just the correspondence, the letters between them through email, but they've decided that they're going to write a novel together, which is called The Archivists. Yeah, right. They're writing and then you're holding in your hand the book called The Archivist. I mean, I love the sort of layers of all of that. So
yeah, I mean, it is multi-layered. There's no question about it. And that novel was written in notebooks, in 12 notebooks. So what happens? I can give this part away. Nadia Fontaine feels threatened. She's going to lose her job, whatever. So she puts these. She wants to be remembered. So she puts all these emails up in the dark archives, when the affair,
right.
I'm giving it away, but the affair is found out. And then there's some more tragic stuff happens. But she just can't, she herself, it's not just that other people who are writers want to be remembered. She wants to be remembered too. She wasn't just his muse. She was his co-author. And the Archivist,
Moleskins.
The book they were writing together is in 12 moleskins. And Emily, again, we're giving away too much, but I mean, she comes across him. That's like, I mean, it'd be like, if fictionally, it's like finding a letter that, I don't know, that Mark Twain wrote to somebody. I mean, it would, in the archival world, this is gold to find. And this, Janet, with your book, Yours for Probably Always, about Martha Gellhorn, you found stuff that archivists dug into. And sometimes they don't even know all that's in.
They didn't know. In my case, the archivist who would have cataloged Martha's papers did it in the 1960s. Martha gave her papers in 65, the first cache of them, and added to them up until just before her death in 98. And I know more about Martha than her archivist knew about Martha. And the other thing is when you're looking at personal papers, you have to know about the life in order to know what you're looking at. So, for example, there was a folder that was labeled correspondence from friends in the 1970s and 80s. And Rex, because I wrote you a letter from Boston when I found this letter. In that folder was a letter from Hemingway from 1937. So
yeah, and I mean, in my
case,
yeah, it is crazy. And sometimes what archivists do, and I've had, I don't want to name any of them, they might even be watching this, but I know a gentleman, and I talked to him. He was fascinating. He's just putting stuff out on the dark archives. He's digitizing. He's a digital preservationist because it's supposed to go to the shredder, and he doesn't think it should be shredded. So he's just putting it up there, but who knows how they'll ever be able to find it. Sometimes they drop it into the boxes, but they don't index it, Janet. So you don't, like the letter that you found. And, and it's like, so so here's the thing. Emily's, I get away from the technical side. I suddenly saw, because I had to see something else. I'm not an archivist. I don't want to write a technical novel. I want to write a thriller, a mystery. She's a detective. She's a sleuth. She comes upon something. She happens upon something, but once she does, she starts to sleuth because she sees something went really wrong, not just with this relationship. Something went really wrong with how did she drown? I mean, this woman is a champion swimmer. She's a long distance swimmer. She's a surfer. You know, that doesn't make sense. And you're dealing with powerful people. And now we get into classic mystery stuff with The Long Goodbye or whatever. The power can cover things up. Money can cover things up. Yeah.
Always. And you expect that. But this takes me to another question or prompt that I wanted to get you to talk about. And that's setting, because the setting is like a character in this book. And setting matters so much. It actually drives the narrative in a way. So you have the beaches, you have the paragliding, you have the St. Regent's Library itself, which is really the Geisel Library at the UCSD campus, that brutalist structure. Anyway, do you want to talk about how setting?
I grew up in San Diego, and you know, I was as I wrote in a thing just recently, I was just a stoner surfer, discovered books. I got into the University of California in San Diego, and my life was transformed. And that library, for me, it was a coming home. But I like to know the world that I'm in. In fact, where I'm talking right now is where Emily Snow lives, to be honest with you, is the beaches and everything. So now I start to play on, I guess, I don't do it intentionally, but symbolism and metaphor, you know, that Nadia drowns. Nadia is a surfer. Emily herself is kind of an aspiring surfer. There's something about, to me, the ocean. There's something about this citadel of learning that is symbolized in that incredible library, Geisel. It's just an extraordinary building, and I want you to. Well, Hemingway famously said, you know, you have to know the weather, and or something like I was giving advice to a writer, and I thought to myself, yeah, it's the same as when we were not going to talk about Sideways, but I know all those locations when I'm writing. I don't like to be in a world. I know some writers are really good at doing this. I don't like to be in a world where I don't know where I am. I want to know that I'm in a place. And I grew up in Southern California, and somebody once asked me, so in front of 300 people, so you grew up in San Diego, Rex, what was that like? I said, terrifying. And they were all laughing, and he said, why? Why is that? I said, can you imagine 300 days of sunshine a year? We artists, we crave darkness, we crave rain, whatever. So
we're happy when it rains.
Yeah, we are. If there's a thunder shower.
Yeah, even better.
And actually, so the novel actually opens with fires raging in California, and
which were raging at the time that you were writing it too.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that. I'm aware of narrative trajectory, and I won't write, honestly. Of course, bear in mind this is coming off an 8-episode teleplay, and I hope it will be a limited series. It's out to the who's who up there. You know, we'll see. Fingers crossed. But it is a long novel. But remember, it is meant to be an 8-episode limited series, and it really will. There's something about San Diego. There's something about that university. There's something about growing up here that resonates with me on a kind of an emotional level, the same way that seeing my papers taken and in those, and the work that had been done, the caring of this work that often I didn't probably think all that much of. It's a very moving and emotional experience, and I wanted to celebrate it, but I had to find the story, and I found it in I've written mysteries before. My second feature film is a mystery. And the book that Miles Raymond, Paul Giamatti, and Sideways can't publish is actually a mystery. And I was that guy who couldn't publish a mystery. So this is.
Well, there was also La Purissima, right?
Well, that's the one I'm talking about. And,
okay.
And so that's, it didn't get published. Had it been published, there never would have been a Sideways. But I've always been drawn to mysteries because going back to The Long Goodbye quickly, Long Goodbye is not a whodunit. It is because he had to play to the genre, but it's really about betrayal. He's after bigger themes, and there's so many whodunits are just about whodunit, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, but I'm actually, at the risk of immodesty, I'm after bigger themes here. I'm after your legacy. I'm after being remembered. I'm after love. This book it's a love story.
But also betrayal, like Chandler, also betrayal.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are several betrayals in The Archivist.
Yeah, there are.
Do you want to talk a little bit? I mean, I have my own ideas about what characters are most like you, but what characters are most like, or aspects of you in this book, would you say?
Well, there's no question that the famous writer, I'm not, 1/10 as famous as I make them, because I'm always trying to exaggerate and amplify to up the stakes. That you just have to do that. But I am like that character in some ways. Although probably more, this gets really personal now, but probably more in terms of the relationship he has with his wife, which is a relationship I had, with my ex-wife. She's, comes from a wealthy family, and I raised that stakes. And then there's a certain kind of controlling aspect that he feels. And he's, when we meet him, he's kind of a broken man. He's writing screenplays. This is a famous literary author. Not that I was that person, but he wants really to get back to himself and write what he really wants to write. So,
and he says that Elizabeth has colonized his unconscious. Right? That's a little familiar, Rex.
I know. No, it is. Yeah, I mean, I mean.
But I also see aspects of you in Emily too.
Yeah, in the young detective, I mean, there's something kind of not pugnacious, but what's the word I'm looking for there? I mean, there's something about her. She just has a certain grit and fortitude. She won't give up at all.
She's intrepid.
Yeah, she really is. Thank you.
She's intrepid and indefatigable, and
I really wanted to create a hero of somebody who, a young woman who is, she's not, like we see so many women in film and TV shows who pack guns. All 4 women I have, and they pack brains. All 4 of them are really, really strong. And like you said, they're all kind of circumambulating this guy, this famous author, and they're all fighting for a part of his soul, but each in every different way. Nadia Fontaine was in love with him. The wife doesn't really even care about the affair so much as
because there have been many others.
There have been many others, and just looking, and I mean, everybody is flawed.
She's looking more at his legacy than that she's put in place than she
and also their social life in La Jolla, and looking and putting up appearances, because she in the novel she's she's running for mayor. Then you have the director of special collections. This is her legacy. She doesn't want the
Helena.
Yeah, Helena.
I didn't mention Helena when I was rambling at the beginning, but Helena, yes.
Yeah, but so she's, obviously she's been cultivating this relationship, because for her, she has built this library into something grand, and the 8th floor, the top floor, is going to be transformed into an event center and this beautiful thing, and she needs the money for that. And then, of course, you have, Emily, who is starting off as a young archivist who believes in the preservation of the historical record. As simple as that. They're all, and that involves going to Raymond and saying, here's, I found this. What do you want me to do with it? You want me to bury this? Are you kidding me? You have buried this? I mean, it's my favorite. Well, you guys at Exile, you excerpted that scene where she confronts the professor, and it's one of my favorite scenes, because I admit the novel is a slow build and it's a slow burn to that point, but it's not so much when we get into the wrongful death and everything else. It's when she confronts this 27-year-old confronts this 50-year-old man with this past that he's buried. How could you possibly obliterate this woman from your life? That's insane.
But also, Rex, it's also kind of timely when you think we're living through a time where words seem to be void of meaning, and truth doesn't matter, and you have somebody who's on the side of truth, and stepping.
Thank you, Janet, for bringing that. That is
right.
I try not to sit there and say, okay.
I don't mean it in a heavy-handed way. I mean just
Truth is a very fragile and rare thing today, as we know, and lying seems to be the via regia to success. And Emily is sticking up for the truth. I mean, we can get into the gray areas of privacy, and I'm sure a lot of people are going back into their archives and now recurating them and looking for something that might compromise them down the road if they found a letter where they accidentally said something they didn't mean to say or whatever. But look, here's the deal: the truth is the only way we're going to know. Future archivists are going to know the past. They're only going to know the past in the preservation of the truth. And the only way we're going to know who we are today, how we got to where we are today, is through archivists who are preserving as much of the truth as they can so that we have an historical record. And, but I have to, I've got, from a novel standpoint, I have to take it to a fictional level. I need a love story. I need a mystery. But the thing is I am after those bigger themes, and they matter. They matter a lot.
And
a lot to me.
the stakes are higher when you're able to ramp it up that way. I mean, I think one of the things that really pays off with The Archivist is how all of the narrative threads drive towards a very satisfying end, right? You don't leave anything unknown at the end, and that's very satisfying for a reader. Another thing I want to talk about, and then I'll maybe take a look at some of the questions. But before we get to that, I just want to talk about your love of language, because that's also clear in the way the book is written. I think you trust the reader to bring a certain kind of intelligence to the book, and also to enjoy the language that you do use. You want to just talk about that?
Well, I mean, I come from both movies and literature, both, and but I think honestly now I read more books, and I read only fiction, and not that I'm against nonfiction, I'm not, and I love it when somebody has a way with language, and there's a beauty to it. It's transformative. It's alchemical. I read Julian Barnes. It may not even be his best book, but the way he, his command of language is so good. There's so many great writers, and of course this book is also about writers and their love of language and their love of words. And I think, we may be losing that, unfortunately, a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to get on a negative thing there. I think actually, people ask me, is the novel dead or something? I said, no, the novel isn't dead. It's actually more alive than ever. It's the readers who may be going extinct. That's my biggest fear. And
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that.
I think you and I disagree about that.
But I do. I love language, and I love words, and I love. I read Ross MacDonald, for example. I don't even read them for plots anymore. I read them for just his similes and his metaphors, because they're so.
Well, that's like Chandler. Like the language, the idiosyncratic figurative language is just spectacular, and I'm sure that you find when you get the right simile or right metaphor, it's a bit of a triumph, right?
It is. It's almost. There's a lot of little mini triumphs as you go inside. I mean, I actually write very fast initially because I want to get the story out, because I'm actually seeing the whole story. So of course, this was coming off the limited series, but when I sat down to write this very, very long novel, I wrote it in 90 days, the first draft. But
yeah,
then
it was like turning on a tap for you. I mean, I guess I don't know if I mentioned this to people who are tuning in here, but we've been friends for years, and so support each other through the process, from thinking about a project to drafting a project to revising a project, and so I've been with you from before The Archivist was even an idea, and once you settled on it, you were so fired up about it. Now, I just want to go to some of the questions here, just so we can get. Here's the first one. It's, how is the process of writing a story so personal and invasive in the life of another?
I'm not sure I understand that.
So I think because it's such a personal and invasive narrative, how did you tap into those feelings to write the book?
Because I'm unafraid. When I wrote Sideways, I mean, I've told the story many times. My agent loved it, but my ex-wife, who went on to win an Academy Award, is now the chair of NYU Tisch School of the Arts. She told me to burn it. It was so personal. And I gave it to somebody else, and they said, "How could you be so personal?" And then, of course, we know what happened with that. To me, the personal is getting to the real, and it's getting to the true. And I just it's harder to take the rejections when you go to the personal, because I'm not just writing about an FBI profiler and whatever, and if it didn't sell, then no, I'm giving you myself, and when I'm rejected, it's very hard. But I feel that it's the only way that I'm going to get into deeper waters if I go to the personal, and I'm unafraid to go to the personal. I will go there.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of people it's hard, and for people who know me, maybe it's hard. And as you know, we're doing the 3-volume autobiography, which is going to go very personal. But
it is very personal.
But in that one, obviously the person I'm going to be the hardest on is myself.
Is you.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of like with Emily disinterring these truths. These are painful truths that she presents to this famous author, this professor. And I think it's the only way that we don't live a life unfulfilled, or we live a life half worked out, that we didn't expose ourselves. I've always thought, to me, the writers that I've really loved, like Clarice Lispector recently, who I read a lot of, or I don't know, even just so many writers. Like I can't read, say, Franz Kafka's novels anymore, but I can read his letters to Milena because they're so personal. I see the true man in there. I see the true Clarice Lispector in her work because it's so personal. I don't know, that I just feel like that's where I'm my most honest.
Yeah. And when you're saying about letters to Milena, as you know, for me, I am obsessed by correspondence, and I'm also a correspondent. You're in receipt of many handwritten letters from me over the years, but I think I'm drawn to the truths of the moment. When those letters are being written, you're in a very specific time and place, and there's a very specific audience for each of those letters. Let's go to another question. In your research, was there anything extremely fascinating that you uncovered?
Well, certainly the dark archives. When I heard about them, just
because they don't even sound real, do they?
No, well, they also call it dark storage. But then I also heard it was called dark archives, and I thought, that sounded very poetic to me, very lyrical. I said, oh, what is that? Well, there are these servers. Well, that doesn't sound so poetic. But there's a lot of stuff out there, stuff that's been preserved. But for whatever reasons, for privacy reasons, for restrictive reasons, like James Baldwin's collection has many restrictions on it, they put it on these servers out there. And I thought, oh, wow, now we have a whole cosmology of especially, love letters. Anything could be put out there. These people, one person, and I don't even want to name some of these people, but one person can put stuff out there that no one else knows where it is. So for me, the dark archives, I just said, okay, I'm in now, because I can have anyone put anything out there, and I can have a young Emily Snow find that stuff, and now we have a story. Now we have conflict, and so that in my research, the dark archives, and finding out that so much of what is in these repositories is not available to the public. They don't know what's out there.
Before I ask the next question, it's just something attached to that too. Like all these server farms, what happens to the dark archives if all of those crash? Like I'm such a Luddite, and I love to have, paper. Drafts on paper, and I just think there'll be some point when dinosaurs like me are going to be the only ones with records.
Well, and that's a really good point, and this is what keeps archivists up at night. Not all archivists, but a lot of them. And I had to kind of solve this problem because in my own case, I have thousands of emails, and if they're just out there and servers go dark because of actually energy crisis or whatever, we're gonna lose all this stuff, because I used to write in journals in hand, and typewritten and everything else. But now my journals are my emails. I write very lengthy, as you well know.
I know.
Not just emails and text. How do we save?
Yeah.
And archivists are working on it. And I found a program that actually can save emails in PDFs. But PDFs is still one removed from actually printed out. But at least
that's right.
At least I'm one removed from it. And, the good news is if the server farms came back up, then I would at least have it on hard drives. And then we get into, there is deterioration with digital. It is not perfect. There's a thing called bit rot. And as it moves from different formats, because formats keep changing, there actually is degradation in these files. And Archivists, and of course, even worse is there's more content than ever out there. Somebody once said recently that there's more content spewed by the internet every 48 hours in the entire 20th century.
Oh, that's so depressing.
Every 48 hours, there's more content just being spewed out there. How do we preserve it? And what do we preserve? It gets down to actually a choice that archivists are going to make. There's only 8,000 archivists. There's other people too. There's records keepers. But this profession is going to grow by 300-400% in the next 10 years. That is a fact. And a lot of it will be private people, rich people wanting to, have an archive of their business, their life, or whatever. But I'm talking about, the preservation of the historical record. Of course, I would love to keep writing more books where Emily Snow, she comes in and, blows the smoke off the muzzle of her gun and rides out of town, and now goes to London or goes to Paris, goes to
Florence and goes to Bernard Berenson's papers in Florence.
There you go, or goes to another university in the U.S. and can come in and discover. It won't be as long a novel because I set up now at least the Project Archivist, but and can go in and find other things that maybe were in a closed archive.
Restricted papers,
papers,
because I had to get permission to get access from Gellhorn's literary executor. Her papers are restricted until 25 years after her death. So there's that aspect too of the archival world. Let me go to this next question from Graham Strong, who wants to know, since The Archivist was such a departure for you genre-wise, did you have time adjusting to that, or did you just embrace it full speed ahead?
Hi, Graham. Well, as I said earlier, my second feature film is a mystery, From Hollywood to Deadwood, and actually the novel that I wrote that didn't get published, that is Miles Paul Giamatti, La Prisma, would have had this character Raymond Savage, who becomes a detective in the course of it. So it wasn't that great a departure for me. And also, I've loved mysteries my whole life, along with other literature as well. It was, what was a departure for me were having 4 strong women characters, and then being in a profession and in a workplace, because I've never had a real job in my life, but we don't need to go there.
That's another story. That's another evening full of that, Rex.
That'll be in the autobiography. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not.
But I needed to. So that was the departure, was going into a profession, and I the person who processed my papers was a huge consultant and help, and then I talked to other archivists, and I said, look, if there's anything in here that doesn't ring true, flag it. And they said they flagged very few things. They said, no, this is our world. Yes, there's fictional things. But I didn't. I wanted it to ring true, and so that was the part that was. It wasn't hard. It was fascinating because it was taking me out of, because Miles Raymond in Sideways is Rex Pickett, circa 99, 2000. Okay, I am that guy, but I am not that person today. So I'm not these 4 women. There's maybe a little piece of me in all of them, or I did know some of them. I mean, I'm more the main character, but it was really going into a completely another profession, going into a workplace where you got to come in at a certain time. I don't have those issues in my life, and you got to go out at a certain time. You have to deal with people who are above you, and bosses and supervisors and head librarians, and
a bureaucracy.
Right. Yeah. A whole hierarchy. And actually that forms a lot of it. And that I think will come through in the limited series when they do it. I really believe it. It'll be a workplace as much as anything else, because there is a whole hierarchy in there, and there are secrets and other things. And so that's a good question, Graham. The mystery part was easy for me. It was the workplace setting, and getting that right. But I had a lot of help.
And I've got another question for you there. Wondering, were there any scenes that were cut from the final draft that you wish hadn't been cut?
That's a great question. And I mean, because it's a long novel. And I said to my editor, I said, cut, anything, and I took 98, 99% of her cuts. And then at some point she just said, I don't know where else to cut, because it is a novel nested in within another. In the teleplay, interestingly, Emily goes to a faculty, staff, and counselor and has these scenes where she literally opens up because she's living with these secrets all alone. She really has no friends down here at all. She's really a total loner. In the novel, I didn't need those scenes, and so my editor said, let's cut those scenes, and I just stripped them out. I'm not unhappy I took them out because the novel's already long. But I just went back over the teleplay to get it kind of back up to speed with some of the stuff in the novel, and I loved reading those scenes. So I guess I kind of missed them in some way, but I'm glad they're not in the novel because they would be longer.
Yeah,
but
and she uses her mentor at the Ransom
well, not only that,
Center
not only that, Janet,
bit, and also her friend who's the surfer, right?
Right.
But she
but not only that,
confides in both of those guys.
But not only that, I have the advantage of the third person narration. You don't have that advantage in a screenplay,
right?
And so in a screenplay, it's show don't tell. She has to come out and it, say it somewhere. But in third person narration, I can get inside her head and tell you what is roiling with her as this thing is building. So I think it was a good cut. I guess I kind of miss it. They're actually, the novel improves on the teleplay. So when the teleplay goes back, there'll be some other things. No, there's nothing I missed.
Yeah, I think that was a good. I mean, I've read all the drafts of both, really. So I think that was a smart, a discerning cut that Peggy recommended earlier on in the drafts of the novel. Another question is about, was there any time that you couldn't have been as honest as you wanted to be in a piece of writing?
No.
Honestly, no, I know. I know you blow things up. So.
I mean, there's some, I certainly, I'm fictionalizing things here in the Archivist. As far as my other stuff, if anything, I'm almost too honest or almost too personal in some ways. But I don't know. I'm going to say the same answers I said before. Is I don't really want to. I certainly don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to defame anybody or anything.
No, your intent's never malicious.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, I'm the hardest on myself. But people can be very, very sensitive, and if they think that you're writing about them, as I found out with Sideways.
Yeah, and you weren't writing about them.
Yeah, I wasn't. So I'm willing to go as. I'm willing to go as personal as I need to go, except I might stop at a place where I don't think it serves the story, Janet. It doesn't,
yeah.
or I'm just doing it for some lurid reason or something. I have to everything has to be motivated for me when I'm writing. I need, and I'm happy what you said, how yes, the novel starts slow, but all these forces really do kind of dovetail. And one thing, and I will give one minor thing away, is yes, it may be there might be Pyrrhic victories at the end, but I believe in redemptive endings. I don't believe in ending with just darkness and bleakness and nothing, even though I've liked movies and novels like that in the past, because I sort of feel like that tracks with the trajectory of my life. My life has gone through some severe ups and downs and vicissitudes, but I've been fortunate enough to, enjoy some really redemptive moments. And I believe in redemption. To me, I'm interested in emotion. I'm interested because I grew up in a family with a mother who was emotionally
very closeted family, a very limited family emotionally.
Yeah, and so I became a writer to get to a certain emotion, and then with the Archivist, I'm trying to get to a certain emotion. And when you get to the end, I mean, even to this day, I won't start writing until I have an ending. But the ending always, not just, there's kind of two endings, and then there's a kind of an epilogue of sorts, and both actually bring tears to my eyes because they just it's my journey, and it's Emily's journey. It's a journey of, I mean, she takes a real risk, and she with her life, her young life, and she shouldn't be doing it. And she really risked her own life, not just her profession, but her own life.
She does.
And she's she's redeemed, and that's what I hope for anybody when we start down this path as artists, as writers, or whatever. We hope for that redeeming moment. Unfortunately, life is not a meritocracy, as you've heard me say many times.
Many times. You need a button with that on it, Rex.
I know.
Yeah. But well, now we're just about wrapping up here. We're at the 55-minute mark. And I expect Nick will be coming back in here any minute now. So, but before he does, I wondered if maybe you can think about, what are you reading right now that you're really enjoying? Is there a book that you'd like to lift up for people who are tuning in?
Well, it's funny is I didn't think I would read this novel, but I just read The Power of the Dog, which is not to be confused with Don Winslow's book.
Mm-hmm.
So it was written in 1967, and talk about redemption and talk about fickleness of the world. It was written in 67. The author died in 2003, but it's Jane Campion, the great director of The Piano and Angel at My Table. It's her new movie that's out with Benedict Cumberbatch. And she just read the novel like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago for fun, but it stuck with her and she decided to make a movie out of it. This guy's novel sold only 800 copies. It was optioned to the films and never made. Poor guy. And now it's a movie that's probably going to be up for Oscars and everything else. It's a terrific film. It's bleak. It probably wouldn't get made if it wasn't Jane Campion, but that gets into a Hollywood thing. And I read it, and it's I didn't think I would even like a book set in Montana in the 1920s. There's so much stuff to read out there, but it's just so it's so beautifully written. I've been reading short stories by Mariana Enriquez, which she's got 2 collections of short stories, a young Argentinian writer who's fantastic. Of course, anytime Julian Barnes comes out with something, I'll read it. I'm all over the map. Michel Houellebecq in France, he's a dark, chaotic,
Oh, yeah.
And yet I like it. I don't like all his stuff, but I like the fact that he exists, I like writers who take risks. I like writers who go to the personal. I like writers who are, I'm not, I don't mean to alienate anyone by saying this, because I think that The Archivist does play the genre in many ways, but I'm kind of against formula in a way. I don't want to read something I already know what it's going to be. And that's fine that you like that kind of fiction, but I like fiction that takes me where I don't like Luis Alfredo Garcia Rosa he's also an Argentinian detective writer, and he retired at age 60. For any of you out there who are older, he retired at 60 as a philosophy professor and wrote 7 brilliant novels, detective novels, and they are so unique and unusual in a way. So I've been reading him as well, and I can't remember him, but the most recent thing I've read was Power of the Dog by Thomas Savage is his name.
And you really liked it. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hello. Well, thank you so much.
I'm glad I pulled that off at the last moment there.
Oh my goodness,
you did,
Rex.
We were watching in the background. You did great though. You eventually did pull it out of the bag.
Oh my God, Rex.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think from now on we will definitely at the start recommend everyone to do earbuds.
Well, no, the earbuds. The problem is the jack doesn't go into this brand new Mac, and so and I don't have the adapter for it. So I went back to my 13-inch Mac, which still has the 3.5 millimeter. I know it's good, and then you had to switch me in, and we made it in the nick of time.
That's me.
Yeah.
Oh God, isn't it weird that we have this brand new high-tech device and we can't work it with our stuff, and it becomes in a weird way obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
Just incompatible.
Guaranteed obsolescence.
Tell me about it. Refrigerators especially.
Oh.
All right. Anyway, thank you so much, Rex. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Janet.
You're welcome. This was fun.
It was.
I hope you all had fun.
And remember, everyone, if you haven't already purchased it, you can go on to the purchase the Archivist, got it this time, button, and you can get a signed and or personalized copy, because Rex will come down eventually and sign these lovely ones for us.
I'm looking forward to it.
Of us too. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time. All right. Oh, wait a minute. Before we go, where can people find you on the social medias?
I'm everywhere. I'm on Twitter at Rex Pickett. I'm at rexpickett.com, and you can actually email me through there. Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm at rexpickett@gmail.com, so just email me.
Just email him directly.
I'm on Instagram at Rex Pickett, and then I have a cat, Max, and I gave him a Twitter account, Max the Writer Cat. No, but I'm easily available, and I love. I don't mind the questions that I get asked about Sideways or whatever. You know, it's a thought, something I wrote 20 years ago, and I'm being remembered for something. And that to me is the greatest joy. It's not about, you know, riches or anything like that, none of which I have, but it's really it's being remembered for something that you did in a moment in your life, just with your fingers and words, and that everyone has that ability if they just dig deep and they, you know, persevere, that, you know, there is that, you know, they can do it. And so write me. I love the fan mail. I really love it.
I love that point of view. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope
right.
you all have a good evening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.